Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Devin Dickinson, and welcome back, Lauren.
Good to see you, Devin.
Yeah, thank you. It's awesome. Been looking forward to doing this again and sitting down, and we've got some really great topics lined up this year, and I'm excited to get going. I love our new format. I think we've had a lot of fun, and excited to see where we can grow this, and I hope this continues to help you all, and we've got a great topic today, but I can't remember what it is. So, Lauren, why don't you refresh my
Set you up.
memory?
So, because it's a fun topic. So, recently, you sent a text message out that you were watching an interview with Mark Cuban talking about spending habits and the 4 spending habits of millionaires or billionaires, and it kind of got your brain thinking about how it's actually 4 very, very simple things that everybody can practice, and so that's what we wanted to talk about today.
Yeah, I was reading this article and watching the interview with Mark, and I wouldn't say that he and I are aligned on a lot of things. I think we see things a lot very differently in a lot of different ways. But it was interesting that his 4 takeaways were probably the exact takeaways that I would give anyone for advice. And it's kind of having that millionaire's mindset as opposed to a consumer mindset. And I just thought it was great the way he kind of broke it down. And it wasn't, and then I realized that this is not the first time I've heard this, right? Like these 4, if you listen to this podcast, you're going to walk away and go, oh, I kind of already knew that. But there's a reason why we have to beat it into our heads because, we all know a lot of these basic things, but we're not millionaires. People are not millionaires. They're not living like that. They're not, even if you look and say, well, geez, I'm not a millionaire. But my question is, are you even growing financially? Are you becoming more and more stable? Are you becoming more and more, quote unquote, successful? What's your bank account look like this year in 2025 compared to what it looked last year at the beginning of 2020 or at the beginning of 2024, right? Are we growing? And oftentimes the reason we aren't growing is just simply these 4 principles.
Okay. So before we get into those 4 principles, I kind of wanted to ask you a question just about spending habits in general, and that why do you think Americans or wealthy Americans spend differently than other Americans?
I think it's perspective, right? I think most people have a very short-term kind of goal, like their goals are right in front of their face, right? Like they see things in the here and now, and there's always the expression paycheck to paycheck, but it's a mindset of like, what am I doing today? What do I want today? What are my goals today? And I think most folks who are very successful, in this interview, we're talking about millionaires or whatever, but truly, we'll just call it successful people, financially successful people, are people that have a longer term horizon. They have a bigger perspective. And so, I'm also a coach. And one of the things that's funny because I just went through a scenario where I had to talk to all of my players about perspective because we have 3 goals this year. One is to win state, right? The second is to win our region, and the third is that we get a sportsmanship award. Like our program receives an award in the entire state that our program does it the best, right? So those are our 3 goals, right? Well, this is a long season, and so throughout the season we have these different tournaments. And so we go into the tournaments, and the players were getting frustrated with me because we were playing these tournaments, and we could have won some games, but I wasn't trying to win those games. So I was subbing different people, trying to get a different look, trying to grow because my perspective is and has always been those 3 goals. My perspective and even though today I like everything inside of you, your emotions go, your pride goes, I want to win this game.
Yeah.
Right. But winning that game wasn't going to help us win our long-term goal. Monkeying around with the formation in the middle of the game was going to help us win our long-term goal. And so I was able to kind of talk to my players and say, listen, you have a Christian mindset. Like in Christianity, there's a lot of kind of delayed gratification, there's lots of things that Christian principles that teach like delayed gratification, right? And so I was like, guys, we have to have this mindset of delayed gratification. Winning this game, some of these players might be on your club team and you want to go brag to them, but we don't care about that. We don't care about that. We care about winning state. So I had to get them to get out of that kind of what's in front of your face, gratification, immediate gratification, to long-term perspective. And I think folks that are very successful financially are able to look and go, this delayed gratification, I don't care about the here and now. I'm playing a bigger long game. I have a longer perspective. I think there's this statement, I think it's Dave Ramsey talks about all the time, where he says, do what no one's willing to do today so that you can live like no one can live tomorrow. Yeah. And I kind of screwed that up. Sorry, Dave, but you get the idea of it. And I think folks that are financially successful are able to have this longer term perspective and treat their money in that way and make their money work for them instead of them just constantly working for their money. Because people that are caught in the paycheck to paycheck are just working for money, not having money work for them.
So Devin, give me an example of someone who feels maybe stuck in that loop of not being able to actually save, or they're living paycheck to paycheck. Can you give me an example of how someone can get out of that?
Yeah, I think the folks that are living paycheck to paycheck have to have a plan to get out of that, right? And so they keep, and their plan is, many people have been like this, and I've been like this. We've all been like this at points in life. Their plan is, when this big thing happens, then I'm going to change, right? Mm-hmm. And so, we do this with our weight, right? When January 1st happens, then I'm going to change. When I close this big deal at work, then I'm going to change. When I get this promotion, then I'm going to change. Because we think something external has got to happen. And oftentimes that external is money getting inserted into our bank account. We think that something is going to happen. Like when I get that inheritance, then I'm going to change, right? Yeah. That's not true. We have to change today, right? Anyone that's going to give you, workout advice, eating advice, anything like that, it's always the mindset. It's never a moment in time, right? When your mindset changes, you change. And so, going back to the delayed gratification piece, when we have this idea, hey, I'm going to get disciplined. And then next thing you know, your best friend calls you up and says, hey, we're going to Cabo this weekend. And you go, oh my gosh, I want to go to Cabo. Yeah. Who doesn't want to go to Cabo? The weather's crappy outside, whatever.
Let's get disciplined next weekend.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And it's I'll get disciplined next weekend. Next week, now you're $4,000 in the hole. And it's this constant paycheck to paycheck mentality, and you can't break it because you're not breaking your mentality. And so people are like, oh, I got to put together a budget. Well, that's great. That's like putting together a workout plan. Yeah. I mean, I put together workout plans all the time. It's whether I stick with it or not. And the reason why you break it is because of your emotions. Mm-hmm. You become emotion-led versus decisions. When I decided that we were going, I was going to start this business and we had these goals, I literally am my emotions raged against my decisions. Yeah. But for the most part, my decisions overrode my emotions. Mm-hmm. And it allowed me to make wiser decisions. And so right now, if you're struggling, you're going, you're probably thinking, well, Devin, that's fine. But man, I get my bonus, or when I get that income tax return, right? No, you're going to blow it, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're going to make an emotional decision rather than putting together a plan and allowing your decisions to override your emotions.
Got it. So when you were younger and you're dreaming about being a millionaire, what did you think your first millionaire purchase was going to be? Or how did you see yourself spending your money? And how much has it changed now that you actually are in that situation?
That's a really fun question. So I would break that down into two different categories, okay? The one category is what I wanted to do, this is I really want this for my family. And I really this is life dreams, goals. And then I have what I'll call a frivolous side, okay? And it's great because, again, thinking about things, I think we don't think about this enough, right? But I actually broke that down into two categories. What are things that no, when I can, I will do this, right? Versus this is absolutely 100% frivolous, and I know that it's frivolous, right? Yeah. And so I guess what happened is when we met certain goals, I did, certain rewards for for our family. For me, I always dreamed of properties. I don't know why, but like I wanted to have properties all over the world. And so the first thing we did was we bought a house on the beach in California. And it was for the family, and it was absolutely amazing. But at the same time, I could justify that in my head, not even justify it, but it was an investment.
Yeah. Because, and it goes back to, just to take it back to what you were saying before, it was all part of your plan. It wasn't like, oh, we got this influx of money, let's spend it on this. It was, when we hit this goal, this is what we're going to do.
It was exactly that. Like, and so there were these steps along the way. So the first thing we did was that. And then the second thing we did was we bought an international property. And then after that, we bought a house in the mountains. And then we bought a house in Hawaii. And then we bought a couple other houses in mountains. And now it's like, those are all like, but that was all part of the plan, right? So but to me, that brought me great joy, like great joy. Like it was definitely an investment, but it was like a joyful investment, right? So, and there was also things like, oh, I'm going to buy this watch when I do that, right? But again, I thought it through. I knew that those watches would actually be investments, and I knew that those watches I would eventually someday my kids would inherit them. So everything to me, those were all assets. And so my goals, what I wanted to buy was assets. And, I know a lot of millionaires talk about that too, is assets versus things that depreciate. So then I had this other category, which I'm going to call my frivolous one. And I have two frivolous items. Okay. One is a Ferrari. And because when I was younger, I loved Magnum PI. And so I wanted to take the Ferrari to the house in Hawaii and drive it around. Right. But the problem with that is they depreciate like crazy. Now, I would tell you this. My strategy is, one of my companies I'm invested in is an auto dealership. And so I'm like, find me a Ferrari that I can't lose money on. Right. So I'm trying to beat the system. Right. Which I don't think is quite possible. But anyways, that's why I haven't done it. I mean, I could have done this 15 years ago, but I'm like, no, I know that's frivolous, and there's goals that I have and things that I want to do, and it's frivolous. And the other thing that I've always wanted to do is I want to fly private. And again, I'm like, there's been many times I've been like right there to make the decision. I'm like, no, it just doesn't make sense, and it's frivolous. And so I think for me, deciding those two things and kind of walking through those decision making, like, will I do this someday? I hope I do. Like, that'd be fun if I do, but like, that's not like my goal. I know it's frivolous, and I don't mind putting it in that category, right? To say, and that way, when I do buy it, if it does depreciate at 2% a month, I know that going in, right? Like, I'm not treating it like investment. I'm like, this is a frivolous, I can't even call it investment, but it's a frivolous want. So those were that was kind of that's where my mindset, and it's always been that way for 20 some years, so
that's great. Okay, let's go into actually what those recommendations or those steps that Mark Cuban has outlined. The first one he has is eliminate high interest debt. Tell me what that's about and why that's important.
Yeah, I like that he called it high interest debt. There's people can use wisdom, and you do have like Dave Ramsey's of the world who are like, no debt, no debt, no debt, no debt, no debt. And I don't disagree with that, right? I think especially if you're someone that has struggled with the paycheck to paycheck mentality, like just do the Dave Ramsey thing and just like change your mindset completely, have no debt, right? But like, I like that Mark Interest said high interest debt. I have a little bit of debt here and there with, the different companies and some of the stuff that we've done that has made sense financially to utilize somebody else's money, and I still hate it, right? And it's not even high interest, it's low interest, but I still don't like the idea of guaranteeing that I'm going to give somebody money because they gave me money, right? And if you kind of just let that sink into your head, and like, that should irritate you, right? Like, someone gave me money, therefore I have to give them their money back, and I've got to give them even more money. Just the thought of that should irritate you. And I think it doesn't irritate most Americans enough because they don't think about it that way. And what you should be thinking is, I should be taking my money and giving it, and people should be giving me it back plus the interest. Right? We need to shift that mindset. The Bible talks about being the lender, not the borrower.
Yeah.
Right? And I think there's so many people in the world that are just comfortable with being the borrower, but don't understand the ramifications. It actually says that you're like a slave to that person.
Yeah.
And literally you are, because you're not necessarily a slave and giving them your time, but you're giving them their money, which equals time, right? And so you become a slave to your debt. Now, he didn't say high interest, and I agree with that. I think there is time when you utilize debt to make very wise decisions that make you more money than your debt. But by golly, you had better be making more than that interest, right? If you're going to, like, let's say you have something that's, in 2025, a 5% loan is pretty good, right? Like, so if you could borrow something at 5% and go and make 10% and go, hey, well, some of that 5% I can deduct as well, and I'm making 10%, so the spread on that is 7%, I'd say, okay, you got me. Go for it, right? But like high interest debt will absolutely make you a slave for the rest of your life until you conquer that.
Yeah. What's a example of a high interest debt you would recommend somebody take on personally? Maybe not business wise. They're running their business, but it's a personal want that they have. Is there anything you would say?
For high interest?
Yeah.
None.
Nope.
I can't think of, if you're paying high interest, there's a reason you're paying high interest, because either your credit sucks, right? Or you're buying something that you shouldn't be buying, right? The reason people charge higher interest is because they can't, right?
Yeah.
So you're buying something that's not worth what it should be worth, right? So it's depreciating quickly. They're charging you high interest for that. They're charging high interest because the risk versus reward, right? And so you're riskier. So it means they're charging you high interest because you're not very good with your money or finances or what. But I can't think of a single personal thing to go high interest on, right? I can't think of a good business decision to go high interest. I just think high interest, like over market, no way. Like there's a reason why you're paying over market. Get yourself under control. Now, normal, reasonable interest, okay. But like I said, you have to be able to justify that I'm taking out a normal interest loan because I'm going to make way more than that interest is costing me. And I'm also not putting stuff up. I'm not putting up securing this against something that if it goes sideways is going to cripple me. Imagine like securing it against your receivables, right? So oftentimes people will take out loans against their receivables, and then they'll go, and again, those typically going to be higher interest loans, and they'll secure it against their receivables, and all of a sudden you're late on your payments. Boom, they're just going to go straight into your receivables and take that money, right? You could literally lose your company overnight because you overextended yourself. Same way people lose houses and cars and everything else,
The next rule he has is build a safety net with savings.
Yep.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think this is great, especially for new entrepreneurs, because what happens is new entrepreneurs, as soon as they kind of reach that threshold of profitability, they go, oh my gosh, I worked so hard. I get to finally take the money out. You don't think, oh my gosh, I worked so hard. I get to now save money to not do anything with it, right? So just make this part of your plan going into it, knowing that, hey, it's going to take me 2 years plus to be profitable. And then it's going to take me another 18 months to save enough money before I really feel comfortable taking money out. And so I think having a safety net is incredibly important. So here's a great example. I had a very successful company doing very well. COVID hit. Enough said, right?
Yeah.
Like, that was probably the scariest 90 days in business I've ever had. Sleepless nights. Most folks came out of COVID the other side better than they went in. I would say we were fortunate to be the same. We actually came out probably better than we went into COVID. But that is a reminder of why you need a safety net.
Yeah.
After COVID happened, we talked about it, and we're like, we're always going to have liquid funds, that support our payroll and our expenses for a good, 2.5 months or so. And, just for the great unknown,
Yeah.
and now we're wise with those funds. We invest it, right? So what's cool is like, now I'm investing. So like they're paying me interest, so like, it's not just sitting there. It's not just sitting in a bank account where I'm making 0%, but we're investing it. We're making 4.5%, 5%. Right. And so, we're even putting that money to work, but having a safety net for your business is incredibly important. And whether it's something like COVID or a key employee or you get sick, like especially folks that have like, one or two people in the company, one or two of you, if you get sick and there's 4 people in the company and something happens to you, it could be devastating, and so really having some money set aside, and this is personal as well, but like in a business, the ebbs and flows are crazy, right? Imagine having a really tough holiday season, coming out of it into a slow quarter, then you hit a recession for 2 years. That's scary, right? Like you don't want to have to lay somebody off because you have a bad month, right? Like you imagine having to let your best employee go because you haven't been shrewd enough to save enough money when people who are slow paying you or your customer, goes bankrupt. Right now we're chasing money, and I've had to do this for 20 some years, right? There's always someone that goes bankrupt. Imagine you only have 5 customers and your biggest customer goes bankrupt and they owe you $50,000. You don't have a savings, right? Next thing you know, you have to let 2 or 3 of your best employees go just because you can't make payroll, even though your company's doing great, but you didn't plan ahead.
So take that one step further. Let's say from a personal level, you have substantial wealth. Why, you feel very comfortable with what's in the bank. Do you still feel like a safety net's even important then?
Wow, that's a question that I ask myself often. And I've had this conversation with business partners of mine, peers, and we all kind of, none of us have come to like a real conclusion other than the fact of knowing that you have to have money liquid, right? So there is the idea of, hey, if you know that you're financially sound and you personally could go and support your business in the downside, that's called a cash call. So imagine you have 2 partners, right? And let's say, imagine that your company is, $10 million, right? And so every year you're used to making $1.5 million, right? And then all of a sudden you have a bad year and like you lose $500,000. And let's say you don't have that nest egg in the company because you and your partner say, hey, we're both financially sound. If we have to, we can always put money back in. Okay. So all of a sudden you lose $500,000, right? Well, let's say you take your money and you're super shrewd and you do a great job and you invest it really well and you're making, 10% in the market. And then let's say your partner goes and has spent it all, right? Well, I don't want to go now and take my money out that's making 10% and put it back into the company. I don't want to do that. But at least I probably can if I'm somewhat liquid. So you got to make sure that your investments are liquid. You also have to make sure you're at a point like now I take that out and I'm gonna have to pay tax on that. It's not just pulling out $500,000. It's not just pulling out my $250,000. I have to pull more of that out because I'm gonna get taxed on it to put it back in, right? So it's pretty painful even on my side, even if I was shrewd. Now imagine your partner wasn't shrewd. And your partner has spent it all on Ferraris, right? Like we talked about. Yeah. And that partner can't put money in, right? Like all of a sudden now you've got to put all the money in. So it becomes very painful, especially in partnerships. And like I said, if it's just even if you're shrewd, taking money out and putting it back in is never fun and never good. So having a nice little nest egg in the company that you agree upon, you can even put it like as one of your partner agreements. Like this is how we run our company. And I think having that kind of agreement is critical because you avoid those very uncomfortable things. And I've known people that have, very few people that I've known over 20 some years of doing business have never had a bad year and have not had to have a cash call, right? I think most folks over the years at some point have had to have a cash call, and those are difficult, painful experiences.
So rule number 3 is be smart about spending.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think this applies as within your business and outside your business, right? So within your business, I only like to spend money if I can see the return on investment, a direct return on investment. And that can become very difficult. Like, let's say you're at a point where you have 20 employees and now you actually need to hire someone in HR. And you go, well, geez, how do I quantify a return on investment for hiring someone in HR? And I'm going to tell you, I don't know. Like, I can give you a bunch of generic answers, but really at the end of the day, it's very difficult to quantify some of these positions, right? Sometimes marketing is difficult to quantify. Sometimes product research and development is difficult to quantify. But I try to make sure that every time that we're investing within our company, which means investing for growth, there has to be growth that follows it, right? And so whether you can actually run your CLTV to CAC numbers and see that, on a month-to-month basis, wonderful. But if you can't run your CLTV to CAC, right, and you can't pull those numbers directly because you're hiring HR or you're doing product research or stuff like that, you have to at least have these benchmarks throughout the year where you see that you're growing and can sustain that growth, or I'm sorry, that your growth is worth the investments that you're applying against your company. So I think having regular checkups against your spending in your company is incredibly important. So spending within your company has to result in ROI. Mm-hmm. Now, personal spending, like I said, I think you need to be honest with yourself and understand, am I investing or am I spending or am I living? Right. So there's several things. For me, what I've always believed is that the church I go to teaches this too, but I believe this even before I've ever heard it, is that you should give first. Right. And that's just the way I've lived my life since I was 25 years old. My wife and I made a commitment that we would give first. Right. So I think you give first, you save second, and you spend third. Okay. And that's the way we've lived. And that's the way I will always teach people. It's the way I teach my kids. And honestly, it's very difficult to screw yourself up that way, right? If you give first and then you save second, it immediately sets the patterns of your life. Mm-hmm. So the way that we have it set up, and my father taught me this principle, is he said, Devin, the minute you can get a 401k or the minute that you get a real job, if you don't have a 401k, get an IRA. And he said, as soon as you get your very first paycheck, maximize that and put it aside, because then you'll never know the difference. You'll never know you had, and you'll live accordingly, right? And so that same principle applies to giving, right? So when we were 25 years old, we gave, I think we made, maybe $65,000 that year, $70,000, whatever it was. And so we gave $7,000, and which is a tie, 10%. And then we gave a little more to stuff that was over and above that. And we started that day. Now that has never changed. So imagine adding zeros to that number, right? And then just deciding that you're going to do it when you're 50 years old. Mm-hmm. Like like you can't even comprehend it. Like you can't comprehend giving away that money. But if you start with giving first when you're young, like when you get your first paycheck, then you've always lived that way. It's like you don't know any different, right? Yeah. And so we give first, and then we would save second. We started with the 401k, we started with the IRA, we started doing those other things, and then we would start doing other investments as well as we progressed in our professional lives. And then we would spend third. And then the spend third is kind of between those three categories, which is living, mm-hmm. Kind of your, we'll call it like
personal investments.
Personal investments, yeah, like property, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then frivolous.
Devin's Ferrari.
Yeah, Devin the Ferrari, right?
Yeah.
And here's the thing, I'm 53 and I still have not done that. And I'm not going to say I've made frivolous stuff, right?
Yeah,
I've done but the two big frivolous things in my life I still haven't done, right? And so we kind of done that. And I'm so happy, right? If I never have a Ferrari, I don't care, right? Like, I don't know if I'm gonna like it, right? Like, but
Yeah.
like, and honestly, everyone jokes because I hit curbs anyways. So like, I think this could be a worse decision in my life. But again, if I imagine hitting a curb in your Ferrari when you didn't think about it, like, hey, I know this is a frivolous decision.
Yeah.
You're gonna lose your freaking mind.
Yeah.
Like, like, oh my gosh, I already overpaid for this thing,
Yeah.
and.
Yeah.
So I mean. I think having that kind of a mindset is going to set you free and bring joy in your life. Like giving is joyful, saving is joyful, right? Like because not only is it joyful, but it relieves stress, right? And then you live on the rest, and then after that you can invest, and then someday down the road, maybe you get to enjoy your frivolous stuff. And if you don't, it was frivolous anyways.
Yeah. So how do you personally keep disciplined when you see other friends you have or other, business associates spending their money on things that you may seem more frivolous, maybe not to them at the moment,
Right.
but you're trying to, obviously it's a little bit of, I guess, not falling prey to keeping up with the Joneses.
The Bible talks about this. Like when we compare ourselves to each other, it's evil, right? And this is just a temptation that we all have, right? And it's difficult. It's humanity. It's what we struggle with. Like people, and I'm a competitive person. Like I like to compete. That's why I coach. So I've always loved sports. I love to compete. And I've had to train myself to not compete with other people in that kind of thing. I compete with myself, right? And so one of the things that my parents instilled in me when I was a child is they meant this sincerely, and I could tell it. If I won or if I lost, if I got an A, if I got a C, they would say, "We will support you. We love you. We always love you, right? We're always proud of you. But you better give your freaking best," right? Like if you go out there and you lose, but you gave your best, good, hey, you can go home, hang your head high. If you gave your best and you got a C minus, well, keep giving your best, right? But we're proud of you, right? But if you got a A minus, but you didn't give your best, oh man, I'd hear from my parents. And I feel like I've tried to instill that in my kids, and I try to instill that in my own, and I try to hold that true in my own life, right? So for me, I go out and I give my absolute best, and then I try not to compare myself against others, right? And so again, having that mindset of going, I know what my goals are. These are my goals. And I don't also judge someone if someone goes and buys a Ferrari and they don't, in my mind, shouldn't, because I don't judge them. That's their life. That's their thing. I'm happy for them. I'm proud of them. I want them to live the fullest, best life. And just because my goals and my principles are different than others, I'm comparing myself against my best and what I feel like God has the call on my life and how he's told me to spend my money. And so even if you're listening today and going, well, Dia, I like some of the stuff that you're saying, but like, that's not how I would do it. Good. Like, that's fine. These are principles. These are the principles I live by. And this is how God has called me to live. So when we talk about this, I won't say that there's been points in my life when like I've had jealousy, right? But jealousy sucks.
Yeah.
Like you don't ever want to live your life jealous, right? Like, because then you're constantly in this comparison stage. And then you go, well, their business is more successful than mine, or, they're taller than me. Or, I mean, people compare themselves to anything. And that will rob your joy. It will steal your joy. And so for me, I truly try to have joy in other people's successes. My friend taught me this a long time ago. He said, and I think I did a short on this one time, but he said, when you have friends and you truly love people, and you, not just your close friends, but you truly love everybody. And he said, when you have that mindset, he says, it's so great because you get to share in their joy. So when your friend goes and buys that Ferrari, you get to share in their joy, right? So you can be as happy for them as they are, right?
Yeah.
So he said you get to double your joy. And he said when you have shared pain, when you have pain, he says, and you share that pain together, you get to half your pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so by allowing ourselves to not compare, to not have jealousy, to not have envy, but rather have joy for other people and truly love other people, you get to like double your celebrations and half your pain. And that really impacted me. It really did. And so over the years, I won't say I've been perfect about it, but I feel like I don't carry that like jealousy. I don't carry that envy, and I'm still competitive, right? And all that. Like, do I want to hang a banner in the first state championship? Absolutely. Am I going to be really upset if somebody else does? Absolutely. But it's because I feel like we should, not because I'm comparing myself or anything like that. If somebody goes and buys a bigger house, God bless them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm so happy for them, right? I want them to have their dreams and achieve their dreams, and I get to share in that joy. So it's a longer answer probably than the question you asked, but I think getting that mindset is so important, especially when you're a competitive driven business person, entrepreneur, or whatever it is, someone chasing your dreams.
Mm-hmm. The final rule is invest wisely instead of spending. Tell me about that.
Yeah, this kind of goes to the investing versus frivolousness. Anything that I purchase that's past just kind of living, because we have to live, right? Like, people are like, well, some people are so, they never eat out. Awesome. Good for them. If that's how they're called, they're like, because that's a waste of money. Okay. That's great. I choose to eat out a lot, but I choose to live my life how I want to live my life. But when I get past that and I go, all right, now, we're getting to the point where I'm like making like some bigger ticket items. I truly look at it and go, is this an investment or is this going to be something that's frivolous? And a pretty even dividing line is, does it make money or does it lose money, right? Cars lose money. Like, there's very few cars in the world that appreciate. Now, I do know car collectors that would totally prove me wrong. Yeah. And God bless them. They're great at that. But that's kind of their day job, right? They know how to do that. I don't know how to do that. Like, I'm going to lose money, right? So there are people that can kind of flip that paradigm. But for the most part, cars depreciate at 1.5% a month, right? So imagine saying, oh, I'm going to go pay cash for a car. And I'm going to spend $100,000 a car. So every month you lose $1,500. Actually, hold on. As soon as you drive it off, you're going to lose like $10,000-$15,000, right? But after that, you're going to lose about $1,500 a month after month after month after month after month. So, I think really understanding those mindsets, and then versus, buying a piece of property or buying, even, assets, right? Like, and people are like, oh, well, that's why I buy guns. That's why I buy cars. Okay, that's great, right? Like, I own watches, right? And those watches appreciate, but truly at the end of the day, I'm not going to go take them in and get the money back, right? Like, so I think really just kind of understanding that, is it an investment or is it something where basically once I give them this money, I'm never seeing it again? And understanding that and being comfortable is going to help you in your decision making. And I think we've talked about this before, where people that have a consumer mindset have this idea of, I need to spend this money before it's gone, right? Like, I need to spend this money on a new stereo system or, a giant flat screen TV before the bills take it anyways, right?
Yeah, before it
disappears
to your monthly electricity bill.
Exactly.
That's no fun.
Yeah, and that's no fun. People have that mindset, but that mindset is exactly where we started the conversation, which is this, you've got to break the consumer mindset. You got to break the I'm going to work for money instead of make money work for me.
Mm-hmm. So to end the podcast here, I want to know, what's one piece of advice you'd give individuals who want to start managing their money more like a millionaire?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would go back to the very beginning, right? Put together a plan, get your emotions under control. Realize that we're emotional people. Figure out what your issues are, right? Like, and say, like, my issues are, that I, on payday, overspend, because I'm a shopper, right? Mm-hmm. My issues are that, 2-3 times a year, I go on vacation to Vegas and money becomes unreal to me and I spend like a millionaire in Vegas, right? Yeah. And really kind of getting your emotions under control and living your life according to decisions as opposed to emotions. And, we were talking about this story before the podcast even started today. But it's something that plagues people, right? Like you think, well, I'm past that. Like I'm past my emotions. But I was sharing this article that I had read because one of my frivolous thoughts is I want to fly private. And so I was reading this article about jets, and it was talking about like at McCarran Airport, whatever it is called in Las Vegas, like the Las Vegas International Airport, there's basically more private jets than anywhere in the world. And the article is funny because it was talking about how people that own jets will actually go and lease a jet that's nicer when they fly to McCarran Airport because their jet's not nice enough. Right? So they don't want their junky jet parked next to the brand new jet, right? Yeah. So rather than, fly their jet, which is super cool in Columbus, Ohio, right? But they can't take that to Vegas and go and park it next to the jet in Vegas, right? So they go and rent this. And so it's like their emotions are getting control of them.
Into the jealousy, the comparison.
Absolutely, right. And they're like, and as you're listening to this, you're like, those people are morons. They're ungrateful. They're, but we're like, all of us are the same way. Like, it's just a degree. It's where you're at in your life. And until you break that mindset, that person is as shackled as the average consumer is, right? It's just because they haven't been able to break that mindset. You can't even have joy in enjoying your private jet, right? So, I think getting that mindset, getting your emotions under control and understanding this is the plan that I and God have for my life, right? This is what I'm working towards. This is what I believe God has for me. This is where I'm going. And just enjoying that and being satisfied and then making the most of it. I think you're really going to find joy in that.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Devin.
Great. This was a fun one. Thank you.